Well, as governments across the world continue to give ultimatums to BlackBerry maker Research in Motion, the growing tension between communications companies and governments over how to balance privacy with national security has come to the fore. And as security establishments insist on gaining access to all communications, particularly digital, to track down criminals or uncover terrorist plots, is the consumer's privacy, which is seemingly up for compromise? That's the question we're asking as to our guests today, cyber law expert Pawan Dugal and Rana Gupta, business head of information security firm SafeNet, as we debate this. Let me begin with you, Mr. Dugal. You know, the question here is, so we're obviously talking about BlackBerry and all the complexities to do with data flowing through the BlackBerry system. My question is, you know, we also do a lot of information exchange over traditional, if one can use that word, email services like Google and Hotmail and Yahoo and so on. Would the tenets that are being raised or discussed in the context of BlackBerry and all the freedom that the government wants to delve into these systems, so to speak, apply to our traditional email systems as well?
Absolutely. In fact, the law is very, very clear. If it's anything to do with the data and information in the electronic form, as also something which uses computers, computer systems, or computer networks, it will be the law, which is the Indian Cyber Law, the Information Technology Act 2000, which will be applied. And after the 26/11 Mumbai attacks, we've seen a dramatic amendments to the Indian Cyber Law, wherein huge powers of surveillance, of monitoring, and of blocking have been given to the central government. And with now BlackBerry falling in line, actually we are going to see an era where privacy will be long dead. The citizens could not and should not have any expectation of any privacy because there's no law on privacy, and whatever the Indian IT Act is saying, it's giving huge unparalleled powers in the history of Indian jurisprudence on interception and blocking. So these are going to be tough times ahead for people who believe that they have privacy in the digital medium.
Right. So I think what you're saying is not sounding very comforting. While one agrees with some of the objectives, the question here is as follows. Now, a lot of what happens is presumptive and is not something that necessarily follows an action. I mean, you know, it's not like I sent you a threat mail and there's an action to uncover who sent it and so on. So to that extent, is the BlackBerry case setting a precedent which will in a way apply to even traditional email exchange services and so on?
I think so. We are going to see an era where the BlackBerry will be a watershed as far as the development of jurisprudence on this subject is going to be concerned. Remember, the government is not asking information about suspects. The government is asking its right to cast its net wide across the ocean of information. And it's going to be all kinds of people, legitimate people, corporate honchos, the genuine users of internet who will be on surveillance. So it's going to be the big brother, and the unfortunate part is that there are not enough safeguards that have yet been applied under the new amended IT Act as far as to ensure that such kind of information does not get misused. And I won't be surprised if in the coming days corporate battles will be fought in governmental boardrooms where such kind of information is up for any kind of use.
Right. So, Mr. Gupta, what would be your view in this entire thing? I mean, this is really, cracking the BlackBerry is really like cracking the last frontier. Everything is now available and being watched by somebody out there. If the government can read it, then there's no guarantee that someone else can't either.
So I guess the issue is about the Indian nation as a sovereign nation. I think I will tend to agree with what Pawan said earlier. The privacy has to be balanced with the need of national security, and I think before even we start battling between the need for privacy vis-a-vis national security, we also need to look at the bigger picture that all these servers, whether email servers or messenger servers, mostly which are popular servers, these are hosted outside India. So irrespective of whether Indian government has the access to this information, all this information is already available to foreign government and foreign corporates. how are we assured as of today that those governments, those people who have the access to this information, they are not already tapping all this information? And the second, point to my mind is that in any kind of organized society, the overall benefit of a larger society is always at a higher stake as compared to the individual benefit. And I think there has to be a system of checks and balances. That's what democracy is all about. Right. And India being a strong democracy, you can only assume and be confident that those checks and balances can be built out there.
Right. Well, that's just the question here, Mr. Duggal. What are the consumer rights in this case? We were talking about it earlier, and you mentioned that we're kind of following, the tenet laid down by the United States. But do we really have to go that way? What are some of the options available to us? At the moment, we have no privacy law, but if one were to sort of come into effect, what could be some of the parameters that we could go by?
I think India needs to choose its own course. We need not necessarily follow the US route, which the US followed after the 9/11 attacks. Sure, after the panic of the 26/11, we came across with these drastic amendments. But now is the time to come across with appropriate legislative provisions that at least ensure people and users of data and information in the electronic form of basic personal privacy as also data privacy. Those provisions are strongly missing. I think we need to incorporate them either under the Indian Information Technology Act 2000 or come up with a new legislation. I am nowhere advocating that the government does not have the absolute powers to intercept. My suggestion is that the government should be seen to be transparent and not acting as a big brother. It's important to put reasonable security checks and balances on the absolute powers given to the government, which is unknown in the history of Indian jurisprudence.
Right. So, as a user of, let's say, if I'm not a user of BlackBerry, and that's really not the mass service in any case, but of the usual, the Googles and the Yahoos and Hotmails and so on, what should I be careful and concerned about in my normal exchange, considering now, as you say, that it's all open for surveillance?
Yeah, if I'm a lay user, I need to be very sensible because the government will be seeing each and every portion of my digital existence, my digital identity. So I should be prudent not to use things like bombs or things like terror because they will likely to come up the radar immediately. Even if you're a scholar who's doing some kind of a research on terrorism, beware. Maybe you are already up in surveillance. Number two, please do not use even this communication or this kind of a medium for any other purposes barring purely, strictly professional. Because even if you're now exchanging personal information, where is the guarantee that under this so-called garb of national security, personal profiles of important personalities are already being kept at a later stage to be used somewhere else? So I think prudence and self-restraint will have to be the mantra for any lay user. You can be in any industry, but one thing is very clear. You will be extremely careful on what you do on your BlackBerry, on what you do in your digital environment, because you have to have this feeling that somebody is watching you and something can come in at any point of time in the future.
Right, Mr. Duggal, Mr. Gupta, thank you so much for joining.